Today I wanted to talk about something important for Mass Effect 4, which is how much, if anything, should be a forced canon in Mass Effect 4. With forced canon I mean how many of the big decisions in Mass Effect 1, 2, 3 and Andromeda should Bioware essentially make for us when you press play on Mass Effect 4. The game is likely set in the Milky Way as a sequel to Mass Effect 3, meaning that they will have to address what the outcome of some big choices from the previous games are.
Ow.
Seeing as some of the choices from the previous games were pretty big with galactic consequences, this could become impossible for the writers to equally let all decisions play out. For instance, at the end of Mass Effect 3, you could destroy all synthetic life, synthesize synthetic life, control the Reapers, or succumb to the Reapers. All of these have monumentally different logical consequences, unless Bioware wants to say Shepard was hallucinating and the Crucible actually exploded and the indoctrination theory is canon, and so forth. Naturally, Bioware has to make a decision here. Which of these will lay the groundwork for the next game? I and many others believe that the most plausible scenario, due to the freedom it gives to writers, is the Destroy ending. But our questions shouldn't stop there. Let's say the Destroy ending is an example of forced canon, something Bioware chooses for us. What else should be forced canon, if anything? First, thank you for clicking. My ideal wish is that as little as humanly possible is forced canon. I would for instance love 4 different games relating to destroy, control, etc. But some things naturally has to be forced canon, I believe. That said, again, I think as little as possible should be forced canon. Let's say that the destroy ending is forced canon. As we know, there are different variants of the destroy ending depending on your war assets. One outcome is Earth being vaporized, one outcome is Earth being ravaged, and the survival of crew and Shepard vary. In the so-called perfect ending, Earth is pretty much saved in as good of a shape as possible, as much as the destroy ending allows, alongside Shepard and crewmates. It's likely that the next story is set a bunch of years in the future, effectively negating the importance of crew survival, that is, except for Liara, who appears to still be alive in the teasers. Obviously, they have made the canon decision to allow Liara to live, even though I don't think it's possible to actually have her die in any of the games. But let's focus on the other big decisions besides characters for a moment. What about the Geth? Using the destroy ending, the Geth inevitably die, at least according to the Catalyst or Starchild. According to the Catalyst, basically the spokesperson for the Reapers, which, granted, we have known to be a manipulative and deceptive species, all synthetic life and Geth should die upon utilizing the destroy ending. This is supported by the fact that we don't see synthetic AI ED make an appearance upon choosing this ending. I think it's safe to say that the destroy ending has killed all synthetic life, as we know it.
No carrier, no carrier, no carrier.
But Dr. Epic, haven't you seen that teaser with the crater resembling a Geth silhouette? Yes I have, young patient, yes I have. But that doesn't mean that the Geth are still alive. It means, likely, that the Geth have some role to play in Mass Effect 4, but they can easily do that from the grave, like Protheans, with us benefiting from their relics, artifacts, or even us managing to rebuild a Geth unit from scratch. Like I said in my very first video on this channel, I don't think bringing back the Geth would be easy, and likely not very satisfying story-wise. I do, however, not think that the teaser confirms that the destroy ending spared any Geth. If Bioware decides to just say psych and let the destroy ending actually not work as advertised, malfunctioning according to the Catalyst's predictions and effectively leaving the Geth alive, I would personally be disappointed and I would be expecting a very good explanation or reason as to how the Geth survived. Let's say the Geth did survive, or they're rebuilt to basically their previous status and power level. This would mean that the Geth would have to have at least an opinion on Shepard's choices of Mass Effect 1, 2 and 3. Especially Mass Effect 3, where Shepard can choose to eradicate the Geth or save them from the Quarians. As well as Mass Effect 2, where Shepard rewrites or kills a load of Geth, possibly. Should Bioware force us to have saved the Geth at the behest of the Quarians, or in common peace with the Quarians? All of these outcomes have major impacts. I think it should be possible to write in satisfying consequences for all of these in one single game. After all, you never really saw or interacted with Quarians or Geth much in the first place, unless if you traversed into Quarian or Geth space yourself. Of course, that is where Shepard loved to visit, but maybe the next main characters hangs around a bit more in other places. For that reason, I don't think there's necessary to force canon here, even if it costs us a little resources for the devs. For the devs, I don't think it should be too difficult. We have seen how effectively the devs could ride around the Citadel attack decision from Mass Effect 1, which also seemed a big decision at the time. As for the Quarians, we know they could end up effectively extinct if you make the wrong or right decisions, depending how you see it, in Mass Effect 3. This could be written around by bringing in the Quarian arc from Andromeda. This also tying in Andromeda to the Milky Way. So I don't think there's need for a forced canon on the question of the Geth. By bringing back the Quarians from Andromeda, for instance, it would make it easier for devs to implement them without having to stretch our suspension of disbelief too much as to how they survived. Sprinkle in a little news stories and dialogue options here and there while you're playing in Mass Effect 4, and you effectively have brought back the Quarians without negating people's choices in Mass Effect 3 with a forced canon. I know there is a major distance between Andromeda and Milky Way, by the way, but let's not forget that mass relays can be built, just ask the Reapers and the Protheans with the mini relay on Ilos. The Citadel was essentially a large mass relay for Reaper forces in the space between Andromeda and Milky Way, something also important to remember if we think it's impossible to go from Andromeda and Milky Way in reasonable time. In summation, I don't think forced canon is necessary for the decisions regarding the fate of the Geth and the Quarians, so really hope Bioware takes their time to write that right. What about, let's say, the Rachni? At the end of Mass Effect 3, they are either your grateful allies or your extinct enemies. Here, also, I think the Rachni could be implemented without having to force a canon on our decisions. Let me explain. The Rachni have always been a hidden species in the dark corners of space, so you could just throw in a couple of dialogue lines and cinematics perhaps, and you've given them justice and just let them be for themselves in those dark corners of space. This is also why I don't think the Rachni will return as villains in Mass Effect 4. So this is a point where if the devs wanted to spend a couple of resources giving them justice, then there would be no need for forcing the canon. But what about everybody's favorite dinosaurs?
Greetings!
No, not you, at least in this context. The Krogan, of course. These hardy, practically sterile goofballs can end up practically extinct or on the cusp of fertile re-expansion. Furthermore, their leaders can either be diplomatic or warmongering, so there's a lot of different decisions there. A lot of different outcomes with pretty serious implications. Basically, if you're setting the stage for another Krogan rebellions, or if you're setting the stage for homeboy, friend, good guy Krogans en masse. This decision should be impactful in Mass Effect 4. To do more than just this, to do Rex justice, Eve, indeed the Krogans as a whole justice. To do even the player's self-respect justice, as it's very unlikely that they can just ride around this decision fairly easily. So the consequences have to be either pretty much civil war between the Milky Way species, at the very least some saber wrestling, or peace between the Krogan and the rest of the galaxy. There are a number of cheap creative ways that they can ride around having to make these outcomes clear to us. They can just write in that Rex and Eve died shortly after the Reaper War if you chose to save them, so that a clone, for all intents and purposes, of Reeve takes their places either way. I really hope this is not what they have in mind, as it would be even worse and lazier than the sidelining of the importance of the collector-based decision in Mass Effect 2. The only good part of a cheap workaround is that then at least they don't have to force canon on you. So instead of shooting you in the head, they just stab you in the chest, so to speak. I don't know if I can say that on YouTube. I don't care. I'm such a small creator, I'm not monetized either way. But what about the genophage? There's no possible way they could ride around this, could they? Well, in Andromeda they kind of already have. At least they have started to. It's expressly said by the characters in Andromeda that the Krogan seem to naturally evolve beyond the genophage. Bear in mind, this is without any exposure to Malin's or Morden's final research, and certainly not the cure on Tuchanka in Mass Effect 3. There's no doubt in my mind that this plot point will play a role in Mass Effect 4. I don't think they would have said it otherwise. This natural immunity will perhaps just be compounded by whether or not you cure them in Mass Effect 3. Meaning that the Krogan will become immune to genophage whether or not the cure was saved in Mass Effect 3. Either way, this would mean that the Krogan would have a vastly different view on the Milky Way societies, and likely a different role, depending on your choice in Mass Effect 3. If the writers don't utilize this workaround that got introduced to us in Andromeda, they would most likely have to force canon on the cure decision for us. Just from a resources perspective as a developer. At that point, anything goes, as both would offer a lot of creative freedom for the writer. The Krogan are also populating relatively faraway space, and even with a cured reproduction system and massive birth rates, it doesn't have to be actualized into a tangible threat for the galactic society in Mass Effect 4. A few dialogue lines, cinematics, and such could perhaps be sufficient. In summation, other than the destroy ending, I think Bioware should be immensely careful in forcing canon on us, and ideally forcing no canon on us. What do you think though? Do you agree or disagree when I say that these decisions could be forced canon and should not be forced canon? Do you think anything should be forced canon? If you had to choose something to be forced canon, would you choose the Geth, Quarians, Raki, Krogan, Leviathan, anything from the DLC perhaps? You can feel free to let me and others know, and maybe we could get a discussion going perhaps. Other than that, there's not much to say other than like if cool and dislike if cringe. This is Dr. Epic signing out.